Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. The World Health Organization declared monkeypox a global health emergency. Stephen Colbert said, no, WHO, no new health emergencies until you finish your COVID. Trevor, what? Another global health emergency? No, we just got done with ignoring this pandemic. I don't know if I can handle another one. Colbert, the CDC, has provided some information on how monkeypox spreads, mainly through direct contact with an infectious rash and bodily fluids, which is why they say when at all possible, people with monkeypox should handle their own soiled laundry. The CDC report was written by Dr. Mom, who is sick of this. You're 23, Jordan. Go to a laundromat. The reason monkeypox has been up to emergency status is because it's spreading faster than the scientists had expected. New York City alone has logged over 1,000 cases. That's unacceptable. The only disease you should contract in New York is herpes from a subway pole. Welcome to our beautiful city. Touch nothing. Trevor Noah said, why is New York the epicenter again? Haven't we been through enough? Hurricane Sandy, coronavirus, the Knicks. No, I'm joking. Sandy wasn't a complete disaster. Trevor, seriously, people, what is it about New York? Why do diseases love it? You know, what is it about this place outside of the rats and cockroaches and the subways full of feces and pounds of garbage on the sidewalk? I do want to get back to talking about Just for Laughs' New Faces. Those shows were so strong. My son and I were talking about it in the car for hours and hours. But let's do some other things today. Will Smith back in the news. He has apologized to Chris Rock. You know, he slapped him during the Oscars. Remember that happened? Will Smith released a video saying his own behavior was unacceptable, and he had reached out to Chris Rock to discuss the incident, but was told Chris Rock not ready. It's a 6-minute video posted on a summer Friday, which makes me ask, did you want people to see it or not? That's kind of burying the story. No? Is this just like, oh yeah, remember I apologized back in July when you all were heading down the shore, remember? Will Smith said, there is no part of me that thinks this was the right way to behave in that moment. I am deeply remorseful, and I'm trying to be remorseful without being ashamed of myself. To Chris Rock, he says, I'm here whenever you're ready to talk. Will Smith was wearing a polo shirt and white ball cap. He spoke directly to the camera, answering pre-selected questions. He also apologized to Chris Rock's family and Chris Rock's mother, Rosalie. Rosalie had been quoted as saying, when he slapped Chris, he slapped all of us. He really slapped me. Will Smith also apologized to Tony Rock, Chris's brother. Sure, why not? Will apologized to his own family for the heat I brought on all of us, and to his fellow Oscar nominees for having stolen and tarnished your moment. He mentioned Questlove by name. Will pointed out, Jada had nothing to do with it. I made a choice on my own. Smith added, I'm sorry, really isn't sufficient. Disappointing people is my central trauma. Okay. John Krasinski was on Jimmy Fallon and got into the topic of whether or not Jim Halpert is the villain of The Office. Krasinski said, the internet is always right. Fallon said there was no way Jim was the bad guy, but Krasinski said, well, they're on to me because I played Jim as a supervillain. That's why I did Fantastic Four, to balance it out. I had already done the villain. The Montreal Gazette caught up with Amy Schumer. She accepted the Comedy Person of the Year award on Friday. 15 years after appearing as one of the Montreal Comedy Festival's new faces, Amy said, my goal has never to become the biggest movie star. I just want to make stuff I'm proud of that can be funny and make people feel better. And of course, I want to make money. I don't want to make it sound like it's all in the craft. She talked about calling her tour the Whore Tour, and I've eye-rolled that in the past. Amy now says, I just thought it was a funny name for a tour and it rhymes. It doesn't really tie in the show, but some newspapers won't even print the title, and some theater owners are worried about putting it on the marquee. So that seems as good a reason as any to go with that name. Amy spoke about her comedy these days and said being a working mom and navigating the public eye and the misogyny that's across the board in all industries, it's still a crazy time, a horrific time actually for so many people. I really don't think there's anything funny about all these issues. I'm trying to figure out my voice right now, but I do think I'll learn a lot from this tour. Holtz MTL hit the Nasty Show. I was unable to make the Nasty Show when I was up in Montreal. Taylor Noakes reviewed it and said, maybe mainstream comedy has become so degenerate that a showcase of humor derived of all that's putrid and vile doesn't make sense anymore. That, or my polluted millennial mind has spent so much time in the gutter that nothing phases me. I honestly have to wonder if they toned down the Nasty Show for the media on Thursday night. It was an English language show, and if I had to guess, the median age of most Anglo-Montreal media people has to be somewhere in their 60s, so I'm wondering if the comedians were asked to dial it back a smidge. I doubt that, Mr. Millennial. By the way, I said to my son walking out of New Faces, I said, wow, you ever realize you're like the oldest person in the audience? He said no, because he's in college, but I think I was the oldest person in the audience. I'm young at heart. I don't think of myself as 50-something in my brain, but yeah, I looked around. I'm like, I don't see anybody else in their 50s here. Taylor writes, the more I thought of it, the more of the show I sat through, the more it was clear to me that this was another generation's concept of nastiness. It occurred to me that there are times I can barely stomach 11 minutes of Amy Goodman reading the news on Democracy Now!, and that's literally just somebody telling me what's happening in the world. Tired jokes about the apparent difficulty of finding the G-spot really aren't going to make me gag in 2022. It wasn't unfunny. Everyone seemed to have a good time. Most of the comedians had decent sets, but it didn't quite feel like I was seeing what was advertised. In retrospect, this was definitely a show for boomers, but I can't figure whether this was genuinely indicative of what you might expect to see at every subsequent show, or whether the content was geared toward the gray hairs who constitute an unfortunately high percentage of local media. How old are boomers now? Baby boomers. Baby boomers, 1946 to 64. So Taylor thinks the show's for 58-year-olds? Okay. To underline this point, what seemed to be a just for laughs dad's garage band kicked off the show playing the classic rock hits of 50-plus years ago. They continued playing between sets throughout. At one point, it sounded like they were playing an amalgam of theme songs of every 90s sitcom. Big J. Okerson did a fine job as host. He kept the pace going, kept the audience entertained, and earned some great laughs. I appreciated his endless torrent of subdued one-liners as much as his distinct way of crafting and instructing narratives. Josh Adam Myers was the first set of the night. All I could say is, A, he wasn't the right energy for the beginning of the show, and B, the JFL audio technicians needed to either turn up his mic or turn the band down. Wow. To the first point, Big J hadn't built up the crowd sufficiently for Myers' hard rock musical comedy number, which made it really feel out of place. I think that's probably fair. I wouldn't expect music in the first spot there. Sophie Buttle was second to go, but should have been first since her set was a quirky, slow burn that began a bit more subdued and seemed to better match the general atmosphere of the room. That sounds like a fair comment as well. If you heard my review of the New Faces show, there was definitely something to the flow, and some people got bad draws, and that is a thing. Yamanika Saunders was the first start to finish good set of the night. Ouch. But again, low on the nastiness. Most of her set had to do with relationships and covered a lot of well-trod ground about men and how stupid and awful we are. She had some killer lines like, no, I've pre-read this line. Is this a killer line? Women want to fix men so much they should have their own show on HGTV. I don't know if that's a killer line. Maybe I didn't tell it well. It's an okay line. Liza Trigger kicked off the second half, had a set that was consistent and as well composed as Saunders. Top marks for her observation about the Canadian national dish. Aren't you so proud of your french fries covered in diarrhea? My son and I, we had the poutine on Thursday, and it was really good. And I was like, the rest of the trip, I'm like, I don't need that again. I mean, it's really good. I'll talk more about the food on Monday's show. I've got some notes. Traeger's comment on her own bisexuality leading to a confusing mismatch of sexual and romantic desires got a good laugh with her realization that all she was really looking for was to date a soft butch who can nail choreography. She says she enjoys humiliation during sex. Her observation, what's more humiliating than helping a man have a good time? That's funny. Robert Kelly closed the show with a good set that was well received, yet still light on the filth. There are different kinds of fat. I hate my wife fat, secretly gay fat, comic fat, Canadian fat. The Montreal Times reviewed Jimmy Carr's show. Again, as I mentioned, I saw Jimmy Carr on the street, didn't see Jimmy Carr's show. I'm so disappointed. I love Jimmy Carr. Montreal Times says Jimmy Carr was certainly in his element. He presented a structured show that started with a number of jokes on screen that tested the audience's comedy aptitude. After the thunderous applause that greeted him, he continued with a stream of rapid-fire, inappropriate jokes that covered topics such as guns, violence, sex, sexual assault, and his relationship with his girlfriend. Carr did a great job interacting with the audience. I would hope so. That's a big part of his act, especially parents who brought their teenage kids to a show that was filled with risque material, and a 24-year-old male who was a, quote, student to his sexual education seminar for young men. The third part dealt with Jimmy Carr's entry into the world of fatherhood and poked holes at such institutions as the gender reveal party and the real role of dads, which he stated was for babysitting the children until mom gets back. I kind of agree with that. Jimmy Carr hit a heckler with this line, in a world where you can be anything, be quiet. The Sklar brothers, they're cool. I have worked with them in the past, and they tweeted this Saturday, meaning today, cheap seats triumphantly returns in its new form, hashtag the nosebleeds. And the first episode is available on UFC's YouTube page. Yes, that UFC, the Ultimate Fighting Championship one. So watch the Sklar's tonight. I don't know what time. They didn't say what time. But on UFC's YouTube page. I don't know. Look now. Maybe it's there. Patton Oswalt said, hey, MST3K fans. The Sklar Brothers show is back on the UFC YouTube page. This was a true heir to the Misty legacy. Hilarious, big-hearted, and host to some of the weirdest clips ever. Yes, the world of sports has its versions of Manos, Mitchell, and Munchie. Tune in. Another big day at the Just for Laughs Montreal Comedy Festival. Pete Holmes tapes his You Made It Weird podcast at 5 o'clock. 7 o'clock, the Mark Maron Gala. Fortune Feimster also at 7. Brit-ish at 7. Never Surrender, the world's greatest lip-sync band. Join Never Surrender as they jump kick their way through the greatest songs of the 80s and 90s. That's tonight's outdoor free show. Those are all fun, too. Tommy Tiernan at 7. Amy Schumer's Horror Tour at 7. Catherine Ryan's show's called Missus. That's at 7. 7:30. Aida Rodriguez, Shebang. Shebang is top comedians who happen to be female. No list of who's on the show. New Faces Canada at 7:30. Nimish Patel at 7:30. Jay Farrow at 7:30. 8 o'clock, Bill Burr. Fest at the Nest. 9 o'clock, Rosebud Baker. 9 o'clock, Preacher Lawson. 9 o'clock, A Very Mark Forward. Phil Wang also at 9. I love Phil. 9:30, Neil Brennan. A lot of eyes will be on this one at 9:30. Variety's 10 Comics to Watch. Atsuko Atsaka, Blair Sochi, Jay Jordan, J.R. de Guzman, Mateo Lane, Moses Storm, Rosebud Baker, and Vanessa Gonzalez. That's 8. Wow. I don't even want to click on the link and find out which 2 you left out. Why did 2 people get left out? I'm sorry, other 2 people. I'm not going to kick you in the microphone. I'll keep moving along. But why list 8, not 10, if it's 10 to watch? Oh, no. Gina Yashir, also at 9:30. James A. Caster, 9:30. 9:45, Amy Schumer again. 9:45, the 40th anniversary gala. That's going to be such a hot ticket. We'll have to keep an eye on that to see who shows up. Now, the official description says an all-star gala featuring Carolyn Ray, Chris Redd, Hoodoo Hersey, Catherine Ryan, Mateo Lane, Tommy Tiernan, and special guest Rick Mercer. It'll also include special surprise presenters. I can't imagine that that's not going to be like All-Star City for the 40th anniversary gala. 10:30, Fest at the Nest. 10:30, Nish Kumar. That'd be great. 10:30, Sam Campbell, Companion. Deanne Smith at 10:30, Langston Kermit at 10:30, and the Midnight Shows. The Worst, hosted by Big J. Okerson. The Low Key Comedy Show, and the Living Wake of Nicole Byer. The Alternative Show, and Midnight Surprise. So even 5 shows at midnight tonight. But the big one to keep an eye on will be the gala. Let's see if we can do some detective work here. So Bill Burr is in town, and his show's at 8, so he'd be free. And a lot of these venues are like right next to each other as well. So it's not like travel time is a lot. Now, Amy Schumer's second show overlaps, but I guess she could wrap and catch up at the end. And then there are people like Russell Peters and Ronnie Chang who are in town for shows on Sunday. I could see them showing by, but I'd be surprised if some of the big heavy hitters from all time Montreal Just for Laughs don't show up, including Howie Mandel, who owns the thing. So keep an eye on that. And that's your comedy news for today. Follow the show for free on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, wherever you get your shows. See you tomorrow.